So, as young leaders, but more importantly, as global citizens, let me be clear. You'll always be welcome here in London. But that's not to say that, like many other cities around the world, we don't face major challenges. We do. How do we recover from this pandemic? Not just go back to the world we were in, but to build something better. And at a moment when authoritarians are on the rise and a new breed of reactionary nationalism is rearing its ugly head, at a moment when we face the specter of climate breakdown and an air quality crisis that's poisoning our cities and our citizens, and at a moment when we are grappling with destructive levels of economic inequality, technological upheavals, and a refugee crisis, we must stand for our democratic values and show that when it comes to tackling the defining challenges of our time, that we achieve more together as a globalized world than we do alone. And this is the main message I want to impart today. Think about the opportunity of a vaccine. Nations cannot be inward looking and stash vaccine for themselves. To eradicate the virus, the whole world will need to work together and make the vaccine accessible and affordable for everyone across the globe. Shamefully, there are some politicians out there who wish to absolve themselves of their responsibilities in tackling these challenges. People in positions of authority who pass the buck and patronizingly say to young people, "It's up to you. You are the ones who will have to pick the pieces." I reject this self serving view. Yes, you have, as the leaders of tomorrow, a crucial role to play in creating a fairer, more just, and more sustainable societies. But it's wrong to make you carry that burden alone when there are politicians in office today who do have the power to act. The reality is that we simply don't have the time for more excuses, for inaction or inertia on part of our current leaders. We have to be bold, we have to be brave, and we have to think big now. But crucially, we also have a moral obligation to actually lead. This is what we are committed to doing here in London. Our recovery begins with young people, but we need others around the world to follow suit, because it's only by working together across generations, faiths, backgrounds, and borders that we'll succeed. This may seem a daunting task, but don't be intimidated by the scale of the challenges ahead, or fall into the trap of thinking that nothing can be done. Because in these turbulent times, apathy is not an option. If we strive together, if we stay true to ourselves and to our values, we can leave our mark, and we can make a difference, and we can shape the future of our cities, the contours of our countries, and the destiny of our planet. And if we extend the hand of friendship and build alliances between young and old, male and female, rich and poor, black and white, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jew, Sikh, and Buddhist, we will revive people's faith in democracy. We will get back on track and we'll get the job done. So, together, let us show that the politics of fear is no match for the politics of hope. Let us show that the false comforts of isolation cannot compete with the concrete benefits of cooperation. And let us convince others what we already know to be true, that our precious diversity is our strength, not a weakness. That dialogue can overcome difference and indifference, and that the heights we need to reach can only be scaled by building bridges, not walls. Thank you.
All right, beautiful message there by the Deputy Mayor. Couldn't have asked for really more, something on everybody's mind right now. All right, so after that, it's time to know our panelists a little bit more. Well, we have the ladies first, and then we'll go in that order. First up is Nusrat, who is joining us from Kolkata. Well, Nusrat, for a lot of our Indian audience, does not need a lot of introduction. But she's somebody who has just entered the parliament. This is her first stint over there. And she actually won by a whopping margin as well. Since then, she has been part of the parliamentary committee. She works with the minority affairs and also with the Madarsa education. Nusrat, to everybody watching right now, talk to us about your rendezvous with politics. What has been the journey so far, and what prompted you to become a politician and a young representative at that?
Firstly, a very warm welcome to all of us here on the dais, sitting back at our homes and offices. I have probably never introduced myself. Other people did. So yes, talking about the journey, it has been a very enriching one. So before I start off, I'm pretty bad with delivering speeches. So namaste. Assalamu alaikum to all my colleagues from the different countries. I am Nusrat, and I'm still trying to pave my path through this amazing journey where I started off as an actor, got into politics, and believe that, yes, we can bring about the change if we want to. So I'm still trying to take initiative. The path has not been a very easy one. None of us get bed of roses, do we? So yes, I'm still trying, and there has been a lot of new things that I've learned and a lot of enriching things that has come my way. And I'm still trying. I'm still trying hard, but I think I'm enjoying every bit of it. Whether it's working for people, whether it's working for myself, whether being a daughter, being a wife, taking care of home, taking care of people's emotions, taking care of so many things. So taking care of myself, taking care of my mental health. So it's been fun, and it gives me a lot of pleasure and honor when I see that people do believe in certain ideologies that I put forward. People do, even if everybody has their own vision, everybody has their own points to make, but they do agree with facts and figures. And when you give them facts, when I give them facts, I like the fact that they understand what I'm saying and they believe. And today's youth, we'll talk about it for sure, but today's youth believes in honesty. And I am someone who's always abided by that. Come what may, I think honesty always paves its way through any of the problems. So to all of us, that's me in a nutshell. I do not know what to talk about myself anymore. I would love to know more about my colleagues also.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Nusrat also has a very interesting background, and she's being extremely humble right now by not talking about the diverse background she comes from and what it represents. But I'll take that forward and we'll talk about it over the course of the next 1 hour. But let me also bring in our friends from across the border. This is Alvina Almatse. I think, Alvina, I got that right, didn't I? She, like I said earlier, is one of the youngest serving parliamentarians in the European Parliament. Alvina, tell us a little bit about yourself. What prompted you and what brought you into politics at such a young age?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be with you, and also honored to meet Nusrat and others here. I have been following your work and I've been very impressed by it. First of all, I have also just started as the rapporteur for India in the Foreign Affairs Committee of EU. So I will be really working closely with you, hopefully, on these topics and listening to what you want in India, how you will want to develop the relationship between India and European Union.
Wow, that's lovely.
Yes. That's great. And well, personally, I am, of course, one of the youngest members of European Parliament. European Parliament has only 3% of young people as members. And this is a really, really low number. And luckily, I'm one of them from Finland, but for us, we have not had young parliamentarians for a long time either. And as I said, I'm a full member in Foreign Affairs Committee, which I think is also great because that's not usually a committee with many young members. But basically how I have started, actually Nusrat mentioned mental health questions. And I find this very important. All over the world, I think this topic of stress and unemployment, mental well-being is really on the rise with young people. And this is something that I have also worked with on the past and made a citizen initiative for better mental health services here in Finland. And together with climate change questions and other topics, I think this is the reason that I was elected for European Parliament. Of course, it has been quite a rocky road. When I first started in the Foreign Affairs Committee, I tried to get into the committee meeting, and basically the security guards would not allow me inside because they said that you are an intern, and I was like, no, well, I'm actually a member of Parliament, and they did not really understand this. And my older colleague had to come to save me and say that she's actually a member of Parliament. And I'm not sure if Nusrat and others share this experience, but it seems that there really is discrimination towards young people, especially young people and minorities still today. So I hope that we can work with this together and make young people more represented in the Parliament. Thank you.
Well, that's lovely. In fact, you are in the right space, Alvina, because if you are going to be a repertoire and you're going to be speaking with India, then remember we are the youngest democracy in the world. Our average age is one of the lowest in the world. And if there is going to be a young people's movement or revolution, India is the land. I'm not sure if Nusrat ever faced that because she's such a big star back home already that everybody knew what was happening. And I'm sure nobody discriminated against her while entering Parliament. But life post that is something we'll talk about. But you said something very interesting, Alvina. You talked about how perhaps there is such low representation of the youth in various parliaments across the world. And it's 3% in your country. It's actually quite lower, about 6% or so in our country as well. So my question really to you is, and let me start with you and I'll get to Nusrat in just a bit, to try and understand why do you think young people are so alienated from mainstream politics? What is it that keeps them at bay?
A great question. Well, first of all, Nusrat also talked about honesty. And I think this is really important. Young people are really feeling betrayed by politicians, at least in Europe. Because, for example, climate change is a really important topic for young people here. We just got some research knowledge that over 50% of young people who voted in the European Parliament election only did so because of climate change matter. So it's really an urgent thing. And I think that politicians here have promised a lot of things, promised to fix it and help young people. And then often nothing is happening. So I think this is important, that the politicians should be trustworthy and also carry out these promises that they have made. And this is something that I believe that we as young members of Parliament are trying to be better at, that we are actually going forward with the promises that we make. And I think that the activism and willingness of young people to engage in politics is actually on the rise. At least in Finland, my country, I think I wouldn't have been elected at all if young people wouldn't have been voting a lot more than they did before this election. So this for us is important. And young people also have different means of communication. For example, for me, it's really important to communicate in social media, in Instagram, for example, in other platforms.
Talk to them in their language.
Yeah, exactly. And with a dialogue, so that we do not only say that this is what we have done and what we are doing, but listening to young people, what do they want, and have constantly the dialogue. And I think this is really important as well. Not everybody has to become a politician to influence politics. But the politicians just have to listen to young people.
Well, that's true. In fact, at this point, I'm told Brando has joined us as well. Hello to you. I hope you can hear us and see us.
Hi.
All right, great, great. So, Brando, we just did the primary introductions with everyone. Why don't you go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us where you're from and what's influenced you into politics. For those of you who don't know, and if Brando tries to be a little humble, let me point out first up that in 2016, he was included in the annual 30 under 30 influential people in the European political list. So that's quite an achievement. Tell us, how did you get into politics and what's the main reason behind it?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much, and sorry for being late. Thank you for inviting me to this very important and interesting panel on a very important topic. I think that engaging young people and changing the world through it is a very hot topic today, when the world is changing a lot, also due to what is happening in these last months, and it's important that we discuss about the motivation and the reasons why we should be active in our efforts to change our society, to pursue our ideas. I'm a member of European Parliament, elected from Italy, from the northwest of my country. I'm also the head of delegation, so the leader of my own party, the Democratic Party of Italy, in the S&D group, the group of the Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament. We are now in a very special moment for the Parliament. We are working on the budgets and the future of the resources for the recovery after the pandemic, and obviously I come from a background of the youth movements. When you ask me how I started, or how did I get involved, I was a school student when I got involved in youth movements that were looking especially at a topic that it's still super important. It was how to connect local efforts to global objectives. Our group was called Think Global, Act Local. It was already 17 years ago when I was a high school student, and I got involved into that, and then interested in Europe, which was we can say a supranational dimension that we could look at to start to see how to influence also the global trends, and also have an impact on our local level. Think of for example, on the importance of decisions that are also taken at European level, in our case, regarding environmental laws. That when I was a child, the level of pollution that we could allow from cars was super higher than today. Now we have changed on that, and this has been decisions made at national level, at European level, but also global change of mood, we can say, and of consideration on how important it is to have cleaner air. And
it's taken central stage now.
Yeah. So I would say that my drive for being in politics is to pursue my conviction that it would be great to support and to push forward as much as possible what I think is a good model of statehood that we see in some parts of the world, but not everywhere, that unites freedom and social rights. I think my conviction is that it's important to defend freedoms. Freedom of in terms of civil rights, of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and the social model. I think it's important that no one is left behind, that people are helped, that the vulnerable groups are supported. So in this unity of freedom and social model, I see an issue of global involvement and global fight today.
Sure. Brando, you talked about a long political journey then, coming from the youth movement right into political and into the parliament. Now, how easy or difficult? I'm curious here because in India it's a different story, and you'll get to know Nusrat a little bit from now, who is a young parliamentarian from India, and also Alvina, who is from Finland. How easy or difficult do you think is to enter politics in? From where you come from. Before you joined in, we were talking about how there is such low representation of young people in mainstream politics, despite the world getting younger and younger.
Okay, so let's just start addressing the problems first. So if you ask me when I entered, there we have certain speculations when it comes to politics. We always have our preconceived notion about politics, which probably is not right until unless you step into it. You don't really know what is it like. So we have perceived it wrongly, and the impression that there'll be parents coming up to saying kids that do not opt for politics as a career because it cannot be one. Thankfully, in today's changing times, people are seeing it little differently because we have a lot of young parliamentarians like us that we hear today. So perception is changing. So perception created over all these years has been playing a big role in why the young minds do not want to get into politics and bring about a change. If you see, I'll give you short pointers that that can give us a little more of clarity. Let's start with politics engages a large number of people, which is like the maximum is youth, but it doesn't really serve their interest. It doesn't. So the youth needs results immediately because they are very enthusiastic. They have new ideas brimming all the time in their head, and they need that opportunity to vent it out and execute it. But they need results. So if you don't let us work towards our results, we get agitated, we get bored, and monotony hits us too bad. So we're the new generation. We need results. If you're working towards it, we're working 24/7 to bring about a change or do something. We need results.
I like how Nusrat still sees herself as part of the young brigade and not like somebody on the other side who's actually got to
not really,
bring in.
I am on
but
their
Nusrat,
side.
tell me this, if I may interrupt there and try and ask you what I was trying to understand from Brando as well. You're a very popular face. So would you say in India today it is still easy for somebody who's just come from a youth movement like Brando was talking about to enter politics? It obviously helps that you have you are a public figure, people know about you. But do you think it would be easy for anybody who is passionate about change to enter politics, get into the parliament?
Sounds pretty rhetorical to me because you just said the answer, because it is passion. If you are passionate about anything that you want to do in life, you are there. So it is passion that drives you towards it. So anybody, it doesn't really matter whether there'll be lakhs and lakhs of people and hundreds of situations that are waiting to pin you down. But if you really want to do it, you do it. And that's the only rule. That's how it works. That's how it's been working for everybody. So it wasn't very easy for me. In fact, it was the other way around. Because I was a popular face, people always thought that she's going to win the elections because she's a popular face. No, it just wasn't like that. I had to leave no stones unturned to actually make people trust me that I'm going to stand up and I'm going to raise
and to take you seriously then.
And I'm still working on it. People, honestly, let's just... there are certain places where people thought that, okay, she's a one pretty looking actor, she's going to come into politics, and we won the seat, and she's not going to work. She's not going to do anything. She's not going to raise her voice. She's going to come and go put on a little blush on, little lipstick, and that's how it works. I still do that. I put on my blush on. I do smear some lip color, and I do come up with my own. But when you hear me, you hear me. When you see me work, you see me work. That doesn't make a difference. And I make sure that people stop treating me like a goddamn rubber stamp. I'm not a rubber stamp. And this perception will only change when someone takes the initiative. And it's only passion that can help you take the initiative and nothing else.
So there are
back to
challenges on both sides.
your question
That's
had
what
the
you're
answer
saying.
itself. So when
Yeah,
now again
so-
coming back to the point, we were talking about why the youth is alienated from the mainstream politics. Like I said, it does not serve their interest. Similarly, you'll see in all our rallies, you'll see the young people, a maximum of young people running with the flags and coming up with the slogans. You'll see very less of old people doing that, obviously because of old age also. But while they're working for it, do they get similar opportunities? If you compare with the older politicians, no, they don't. So again, it takes you a step back. It takes you a step back. Again, we need results. So if I'm working towards something and I am not getting what I exactly want, today's youth is not a fool. I'm not saying I'm working to be where I want to be, but I'm working for a cause, I'm working for a purpose. And if I do not see the results to the purpose, I would not want to work. Probably the youth today is getting disinterested again. Okay, so I think the focus has to be or needs to be in fixing the education system. We really need to do that. We need to create more employment opportunities for them and a better environment in which they can have better business perspectives, so that when the youth is engaged overall, if the business is increasing, if the education is getting better, if your mind is getting broadened, obviously you see a better future for India. So that is what I don't know how far will I go with this or how much am I putting my efforts into this, but I know that since it's about bringing about a change, you have to be the change. And if I have people listening to me, if I have the youth listening to me right now, I'm sure they'll be agreeing with what I have to say.
Sure, and I'm sure you will have the other panelists also agree with you. Alvina has been smiling all along. Well, for Brando, who missed out on this very interesting story, Alvina was talking about how she's just 28 when she entered Parliament. The guard stopped her by saying, "Now you must be an intern. You can't be an MP." But she managed to go inside. And Nusrat, they're telling you that there are stereotyping that happens everywhere. But let me take this conversation a little forward. And
talking about
Alvina,
stereotypes, you know better, Sonal. Talking about stereotypes, I was just told for wearing what I wanted to wear in a parliament because probably the culture did not approve of it, and the culture probably did. The people who talk about culture did not approve of it. So I can understand. I can
but
feel
then we got to do we got to do what we got to do and not let all these distractions come in the way. But coming back to Alvina, and like I said, I want to take it a little forward here now, Alvina. So the criticism when it comes to young people today is the fact that they are opinionated, they are restless, they want to stand up for a cause. But is that really getting deviated? And that's where it ends. It starts with the Twitter campaign, it ends with the Twitter campaign. We don't see actual impact on the ground. What, in your experience, can be done by young people across the world really to ensure that these campaigns and this chatter online actually culminates into actual work on the ground?
Thank you. Well, first of all, of course, we need social media campaigns, but we also need activism in the streets and in the parliaments. So all of these are needed to bring about change. And what I think is that actually it's really, really possible to make concrete change. And this is something young people really can do. For example, from my background, actually one thing that led to the fact that I'm active in politics was that when I was 15 years old, we had a school shooting in my school. And I had to escape the shooter, and my friend was killed. And this is a really very event in Finland. This really never happens. So it's very rare, but it happened in our school. And we found out later on that the school shooter did not get mental health services. And this was one of the reasons behind the attack. And then we started working for it. We wanted to give people better mental health services. And there were many young people involved with me in this kind of movement in Finland. And basically, for example, in Helsinki, as a city councillor, I pushed through this initiative to open mental health clinics where people can just walk in and get treatment and help. And they have already started, set up 2 of them are opened now, and they have saved lives. And I think that here also, when we started with this cause, the officials and the older politicians said that you cannot make this happen. It's too big of a change and it takes too much money and resources. But we were just patient and said that we have good arguments here and this is what we need to do. And in the end, it didn't take many years for us to open totally new clinics and bring better health systems. So, and I think the same with climate change questions. Greta Thunberg has been really vocal and active and inspired many young people to work on the topic. And I think that it's the fact, if young people are sometimes impatient, I think it's really understandable. And I think it makes the actions effective because we are not giving up. We are pushing the change. And if somebody says that you cannot make this happen, we prove them wrong and we make it happen. So I think that there shouldn't be much criticism to young people here because young people have done a lot more to these topics than many elder generations who have sat on these decision-making moments for a longer time. And young people in a very short time have made a really great change.
Right. Brando, your thoughts on the role of social media in youth politics, really? And how it's seen, depending on who you ask, really, on how it's played out on the ground. We are called the hashtag generation. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's a complex thing because on one way, it is a way to mobilize people on big values and big battles. It's a way to wake up, we can say, young people from apathy. On the other hand, it's dangerous. I want to be very clear because it oversimplifies very complex issues. So it can drive people to be, in the end, very extremist, even without understanding they are. Because they are, I mean, the simplification of the social media will bring you to see everything white or black with no nuance. And especially it will make it more difficult to do what is the representative politics there to do, is to look at all the different interests and see what is the ones that based on your political ideology you want to consider more important. But if you, I give you an example, if you are looking at, for example, the policy on agriculture, from only a emission reduction perspective,
That.
you will want to abolish all agriculture and the farming. You will want to close all the farms. But where do we get the food to eat? It's because they produce pollution, and also you know there is a lot of debate about the meat production, for example, how much the meat produces emissions, and we are working on that also to reduce. But can you in one
you talked about a very
day...
interesting thing. Can I just sort of interrupt there, Brando, and ask you, what is then your recipe to make young people's opinion more informed? You're absolutely right that they seem to be in a bubble at the moment, right? And there is a lot of agitation. Like I said, they're opinionated, they're argumentative, but is that a fully informed opinion? What in your view should young people be doing to get that nuance that you talked about?
Yeah, no, I want to be clear that I think that it's best that they are mobilized and they are informed even in a superficial way rather than not being informed at all. But we need to make these more, as you said, more conscious, more informative. This means that on one way, I think that the institutions should work for more information to make people understand more about how the democracy works, how decisions are taken. I think that we lack very often a basic knowledge of this that deforms the way you see things. So this is very, very important. And also, I think that we need to build more instruments of participatory democracy for young people to be connected with the traditional institutions. So we need more youth parliaments, more youth councils that are really at the core of the institutions
a grassroots level.
That can be elected and chosen by young people. And we already have these kind of bodies, but they are too weak. I think they should be more important, because informed engagement of young people, it's extremely important for our democracy. And so we should invest money in that. This means building a fora of discussion, of exchange that can show to young people that the diversity of opinion is a good thing, is our democracy, and that we need to find solutions together.
Right. Alvina, do you want to come in on this, on how, more and more the world is getting more polarized at this point? What do we do to ensure there is some sort of moderation in this and more informed opinion that goes out, especially with the young and restless lot?
This is indeed a very important question that all of us have been thinking recently. For example, when we follow the big democracies such as United States, we also noticed during this election a very divided nation. And this is something that I find really worrying. I think that there is also a big role of the social media platforms to eliminate hate speech. And this is something that EU should be a lot better at, for pushing for this role, so that the social media platforms would be, more restricting in if you can spread lies or hatred in social media. And it's just a regulation question. To create some rules for this would be really important. And I think that in general, for the young people can be really diplomatic and can have a really good dialogue. But what I'm worried about, for example, in my own country, is more of the older generation. And I think that the young people are really learning the kind of behavior you can have in the internet and how you can raise the questions of polarization. But I think that this is a challenge for all generations, not only young people. But yes, I think that we need common rules. And this is something that we should also be discussing more in schools, for example. How do we build good communication and dialogue?
Yeah, that's key. Right. Nusrat, I'm sure you have lots to say when it comes to an extremely polarized society and how young people have an opinion on almost everything. But where is that leading to? Your thoughts on that?
And why not? I think this restlessness of the youth that you're talking about can be channelized. Like we always say, you channelize your energy in the right direction. Why not? There are pros and cons on both sides of the same coin. So I always focus on the positive ones. I'm always a part of the young brigade. So yes, they're termed restless, impatient, but honestly, you see, in 2020, actually time waits for none. So like I said before, that everybody wants results too quickly. But I believe that they are not a brigade without a cause. They are not. So if you see that youth outrages, like the one that happened against the rape of the minor in Nirbhaya. Let's take in Nirbhaya for an example. The national capital has also toppled the government. Yeah. I mean, when the youth starts taking action about any social causes or issues, it becomes viral in a jiffy. It does become viral in a jiffy. And, the youth can, it sounds a little weird, but let me just quote it saying that the youth can make PM a national, can turn him into a global icon, and also hit the dislike button when they do not like this speech. So it's all in the hands of the youth. And they know how to do it right. So restless, but yes, channelizing in the right direction. So the youth today, they have very, very strong opinion about everything. They have progressive thoughts. The youth today is no longer uneducated, and they do not really have any kind of segregation. They do not care about caste, creed, religion, social obligations. So they're doing well for themselves. And you see that the online revolution is a very, very powerful tool. A very powerful tool in the hands of the youth, and the sensible ones, they know what to do with them, and they do it very judiciously. So that's how things have been working all this while.
Sure.
I am not the one who's going to talk against my new young India, because I am a part of it, because you are a part of it, because the people sitting on the dais are a part of it. So,
right. At this point, we have Dirk Wesley joining us. I'm told he is a member of parliament as well from Germany. Hi, Dirk. Good to have you. I'm told you were all this while busy making some important policy changes inside the parliament. First up, tell us a little bit about yourself. Well, what we know so far is that you're actually, in the India context, been the chairman of the German-India Parliamentary Friendship Group. So you will be good to have a word with and get to know Nusrat a little bit, Alvina a little bit, all of them working in that direction as well. You're also the deputy chairperson for the SPD parliamentary group as well. Take us through your journey so far, and what's it been like?
First of all, it's good to participate here at this important meeting. And let me say that I'm very sorry that I have this delay, but we have an important debate inside German parliament just 50 minutes ago about the actually corona situation also in Germany. So again, I feel very sorry, but it's good to join your meeting now. Tell you something about myself. Actually, I'm 37 years old, and since I look back to school, I was always interested in politics, of course, but I started my engagement in politics on a local level in my hometown, where I was engaged about the issue about getting a train station for my hometown. So that was one of my important first steps in politics, and I can tell you, we built this train station inside my hometown. So that was something where I saw it in early times. You can do something if you are engaged in politics. And then in 2013, at the age of 30, I had the possibility to run for parliament in my home area in North Rhine-Westphalia, and it worked. So since 2013, I'm a member of German parliament. But it is true, since 2013, since I'm a member of German parliament, I'm very engaged in the German-Indian relationship, because in 2010, I had 4 months, I had my legal clerkship at the German embassy in New Delhi. So I went to New Delhi and I lived in New Delhi for a couple of months, and I fell in love with your country, to say this very open.
And the food?
Absolutely, absolutely. And in the last period in German parliament from 2013 to 2017, I was deputy chairman of the German-Indian Parliamentary Friendship Group. And now in this new period, since 2017, I'm the chairman of the Parliamentary Friendship Group. And this is one of the oldest friendship groups that we have in German parliament. And we will celebrate our 50th anniversary in the next year. So for that reason, I'm very engaged in German-Indian parliamentarian exchange, also with my colleagues in the Lok Sabha, of course. And I think that we have, to say this, we have so much potential in German-Indian relationship. We can do so much more cooperation also on an economic level. So for that reason, I'm very happy to be with you today.
Sure. And I love that next year is the 5th anniversary, and maybe post-pandemic times, you can make another trip to Delhi, and all of us over here can catch up as well and get to know each other a little more. But before you joined in, Dirk, we were talking about the influence young people hold on politics these days. And while there is some sense of, I don't know about how things are in Germany. Maybe you can shed some light for our viewers on that as well. Is it seen as a taboo, or is it difficult for young people to get into politics? In India, I can tell you certainly it's not easy. It's not the ideal thing you go up to your parents and tell that I want to be a politician. It's not really looked upon. Give us a glimpse of what it's like in Germany, and what is the entire youth movement there looking like?
It is possible also to become in early years a member of parliament. That is possible. But if you take a look also to German parliament, most of our colleagues are around 45, 50 plus. That's true, to be honest. But we have also a lot of young colleagues here who are very engaged also in my fraction inside the Social Democratic Party. We have a lot of young colleagues, especially in the last years, who became member of parliament. And actually see, because we are facing our national elections next year, I see that a lot of young people are running for German parliament next year in different parties. And we see that this young generation actually is very interested in politics, to say this again. We have, of course, big challenge of climate change, and a lot of young people also in Germany are concerned about these challenges, of course. They're concerned about their future, and I see a lot of interested young people who want to be engaged in politics, who want to change something, who want to do something for the environment, especially. For that reason, I'm very optimistic that in September 2021, we will see more and more young people inside German parliament.
Oh, that's very encouraging to know, actually. And, you know, one of the things that I'm seeing is a recurring theme with everybody who's on the conversation today and joining us is this issue of climate change. And that brings me to the next part of our conversation today, which is about the issues you think that are going to dominate youth politics and are going to be on the minds of young people across the world. Dirk definitely talked about climate change. I also know that Alvina is very passionate about mental health. Alvina, do you want to go ahead and talk to us about the key issues that you think are going to dominate young minds in the coming decade?
Oh, yes, thank you. If you go to any room or discussion at this moment filled with young people and you ask them to raise their hands if they have been denied a job opportunity, income, internship, student exchange because of this coronavirus situation, 100%. So young people are really suffering from the consequences of coronavirus situation. And I think that this will also shape the future of young people. People are generally worried about, for example, their income. And I think here the European Parliament, also of course India and other countries have a big task ahead of them. In Europe, 70% of people said that they would be supporting some kind of basic income trial. And I think this is important for young people. How do you get economic certainty in these times that are so uncertain? And climate change, of course, environmental questions is really important for young people because we will be living here with the consequences. Some of the older generations will have passed away, but we will live with the consequences and the world that we leave behind. This is really important. And of course, the mental health matters. Today's working life is really, really stressful. For many people, it's unstable. It's difficult to combine the working life and ordinary life and pressure and goals that they have for both of these. And I think also the European Parliament needs to bring better security to people in this. You know, we are already regulating how, for example, you should give your working force helmet if they are working in a construction site, or protective clothes if they work in a store. But why do we not create legislation to protect from mental burden? So the right to disconnect also from emails and phone every now and then, and the right to have a free time as well and not only work. So I find this really important.
That's interesting. A legislation on mental health. What do you think that would look like?
I think it has to come from bringing services to people. We notice that, for example, short-term psychotherapy and these kind of initiatives are really efficient, and they also bring more money for the company, for example, because people are not so stressed out and they are not on sick leave, for example, so much. So it's beneficial for all. And I think that, yeah, definitely right to disconnect from, you know, not answering your boss's phone call every evening really late. And, you know, having these working hours, that's also a human right. Young people are really, really ambitious and they want to do a lot and achieve a lot. But, you know, here also there is an enormous pressure. So we should grant them also mental health.
Sure. Brando, you join us and you represent a part of Italy in the parliament, in the European Parliament. Italy has been seeing one of the worst impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. There has been a lot of chat about the long-term implication it's going to have as well. Coming back to the issues, what, according to you, are going to be some of the key bits that are going to dominate young minds?
Well, I think that for sure one big issue for young people will be how to make this debt sustainable for the future, the cost of this recovery, because the risk is that we will have a new wave of austerity, of cuts, of a reduction of social provisions due to the fact that in some time we will need to cope with this amount of money that has been mobilized. That's why also the reason why at European level we started building this capacity of mobilizing resources together with a kind of new initiative regarding
for example,
we created this so-called Next Generation EU recovery plan that is being built by the European institutions to support the recovery through a common issuance of debt at European level. In this way, we reduce the burden on the single member states, which, as I said, will be a very important topic for the youth to deal with, because if you have a overburdened state with debt, you will have a situation that is that will prevent the states to invest in young people as much as needed. And in the next year, we will still have a lot of problems due to the pandemic with the loss of jobs, and for young people it's still a problem, because some young people will still need to enter the labor market, but if there is difficulty to enter it, as we probably have, we risk creating a lost generation of inactive young people, at least to some extent.
Right, the pandemic generation, as many have called them that, and the future of that not looking very good and promising at the moment, at least. Nusrat, you spoke right in the beginning about mental health. It is often said that Gen Z, as they are now called, are the most depressed lot in the world. This is one survey after the other, not just in India, but across the world, talks about how this present generation is growing to be more unhappy than the previous ones. Any thoughts on why do you think that's happening and how to change that?
I think these days people have been talking about it, which is an amazing thing to say and do, because there used to be this social stigma of going through mental health and not talking about it. So you see here, there's a change which is coming about also. You see the Gen Z rightly said today, they are lonely at times, they are depressed at times, they suffer from stress, issues regarding their career, of good money perspectives, like money stresses them out, they yearn for a better lifestyle all the time. So I think the problem also is sometimes I feel that they've invested their lives more in phones than their real lives. So everything is happening on the phone, and they don't discuss their real life problems. They don't. They talk about things which is more superficial. They talk about things like they get disturbed by comments under their photographs. They get bugged down by how many followers. So
you are a public figure and you've been through your own churn and your own course of a lot of abuse and trolling online as well. What is your advice to those watching right now?
Ignore it. Ignore anything that disturbs you, and talk about it with people that you think can help you out. Or rather, sometimes as a young person, I might think nobody can help me out because only I know about my problems and nobody else does. So you have to start talking about your problems, and then you see what we do is we focus on the problem and not on the solution. So I would urge the the young India to focus on the solution and not on the problem. Because if you focus on the problem just gets bigger. So they have not spoken about it. They don't like talking about it. We're always beating around the bush, but never really hitting the right button. So, but again, let's
ask for
always say
help,
that,
because there is so much of help around now. The awareness around mental
there
health is rising.
There is a lot of help, and people have started to talk about it. You see the celebrities, you see the doctors. Even during pandemic, let me say that, you know, I've been conducting a lot of discussions on the social media, just so that you know, people or the young people, they're sitting depressed at home because you cannot move out during the pandemic. Mental health was really hit hard during that time. So you need to talk about it. You need. We had doctors on board. People are coming out in the open and talking about it. It is not a social stigma anymore, because until unless you hit the stigma hard, the stigma will not stop hitting you hard. So coming back to the point, let's just quickly wrap up. You know, we were talking about, I heard so much from my esteemed colleagues, and I rightly agree to their points as well. So when it comes to India, you were talking about issues that will dominate the youth politics. I have quick 3 points to wrap it up with. Let's start with equality. So there's no discrimination on the basis of caste, creed, religion, sexuality, etc. Not only Black lives matter, not only LGBTQ lives matter, not only Muslim lives matter. For me, I believe, and the youth firmly believes, that all lives matter. Important. So point number 2, like I mentioned before, that there has to be job creation. There has to be a good ease to do with business opportunities, where the youth can find themselves fitting into the so-called Indian business arena. The youth needs new opportunities to come up with, and jobs can no longer just be a political agenda. Like, you know, you speak about providing jobs during politics, and then you forget about it. Cannot be done. So the youth cannot be fooled again. And third and last point would be freedom. Very important. We've been talking about it from day one, when the constitution had been formed. Freedom of speech, freedom of this. So when we need to exercise it, we talk about it, we write about it, but do we exercise it? So freedom to exercise their rights, freedom to raise their voice, freedom to choose what they want to do, freedom to choose their partners, choose what to wear, choose what to eat, and rightly the freedom to live life on their own terms. Come on, it's 2020. We are amidst a pandemic, yes, but we are way ahead of times. We need to do what we need to do, like you said when we started this discussion. So I urge the youth to believe in what they're doing is right, and move ahead and do miracles. And lastly, you know, I thank you guys for making me a part of it, and it was so nice to hear my esteemed colleagues speak, and amazing exchange of ideas and ideologies. The youth really needs to have that trust in such young guns, and believe in their ideologies to move forward and at least make any country a better place to live in. So thank you, Sonal. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alvina. Thank you, my rest of my colleagues. It's been a pleasure. It's been a great afternoon.
Well, thank you for that, Nusrat. I want to quickly go back to Dirk now. Now, Dirk, circling all of this back, now that we've gone to understand about the key issues that are going to dominate young minds, the question is, how do we ensure it dominates policy change as well? We were talking before you joined us about how there is, despite the world getting younger, there seems to be lesser participation of youth in active politics. What do you think can be done to change that? And how do we bring in more people inside the circles which are making policy changes? And how do we ensure that the voice of the youth is not forgotten in that?
Whoa, big question. Let me say that we are in Germany and in parts of Europe, we are in a different development. Of course, in some parts of Germany, especially also in some parts of Europe, we have a demographic development that our society is getting older, and that we have more elderly people, that some of the young generation are saying also in interviews in newspapers in Germany, hey, we don't want to be dominated from the elderly. We want to raise our voice. We want to we want to change. We want to be part of our future. We want to, and the topics that I said, what the younger generation actually in Germany is looking on, I think that there's 3 big topics at the moment. And I think these 3 topics, I tell you in 1 minute, they show me actually here that this younger generation has a willingness to do something, to engage in politics, and also to run for parliament, or to engage themselves in NGOs, non-governmental organizations, for example. One big question, actually, you see it in big demonstrations all over the world, it's climate change, of course. Right. But the second big topic is also in Germany, and I want to quote Bill Clinton, it's the economy, stupid. Because we have now the big challenge in Germany. We want to have 100% renewable energies in 2050. We run out of coal energy and we run out of atomic energy. It's a big challenge for society and our economy. But I think it's possible to, on the one hand, to have a strong policy on the issue of climate change. On the other hand, to be economic successful. And we see these possibilities also in the, German automotive industry. We have a big change now from, I think, the old cars to the e-mobility process. And we think we also, as a state, can make this possible, that German automotive industry can also be successful in the next 10, 20, 30 years, also in the sector of e-mobility. But it's a big change. So what you have to do is, and that is what the younger generation is very interested in, to bring together the environmental question, on the one hand, on the other hand, to have a strong economy, to have a strong economy also in the next years, and that they want to have jobs, that the younger generation is getting out of school, is getting out of university, and that they have jobs where they can plan for their family life, where they earn their money, where they are not hire and fire every month, as we see it sometimes in the United States, for example. So it's also a question of social security. And that are the big challenges that we have. And we have also concerns actually in the younger generation about unpeaceful developments all over the world. Because at the beginning of the 90s, some experts said it's the end of history, the democratic movement is the winner for the next 100 years, for example. But now we faced also these big challenges with countries who are not democratic countries. For example, China, for example, Russia. And that is also a task for us in Europe, but especially also for you in India, of course, because I want to say this. You established your democracy in 1947. We in Germany in 1949. So you are the democratic country. You're 2 years older, for example, and that shows us democratic.
But on an average, a much younger population, contrary to Germany.
I think also the democratic countries are working together to shape the future, to shape the democratic future, to be economic successful. That is a big potential also for the younger generations in my country and in your country. We have so much potential to bring these younger generations together, to give them a positive thinking about the future. Of course, there are problems. Actually, also in the Corona situation, we see in the last months that the younger generation had not the possibility to travel. They have not the possibility to meet each other as we have done this 1 year before. And I know that is a big problem. That is also a problem for mental health, to be honest, for some younger generation. But I think if these democratic countries work stronger together, we have a big chance to have a positive signal for the future, especially to shape these big challenges that we are facing.
All right, then on that lovely note, I'm just going to go around quickly for some last comments on really what is the one message, if I could ask all of you. We'll begin with Alvina on one good message that you have perhaps for those, the younger lot watching right now, all you youth leaders and all you youth political leaders. Now, we've been stressing over this entire conversation today on the need for more and more people to take part and participate in mainstream politics, not be restrained to be called just the hashtag generation, but bringing about the change generation. So your thoughts, and we'll quickly take it around the table then.
Thank you. Well, of course, our generation, first we might have the hashtag, but then we have legislation, then we have budget, then we have money. Basically, being active in social media and starting movements does create real change in the best outcome. And I think that for young people, we have hope. We have cooperation. We have all these great forums of young parliamentarians supporting each other, discussing, having dialogue. We have ambitious goals, and we will succeed.
Right.
And I think that we should all believe in ourselves and also push for change as young people. And I think that we should not limit ourselves only to social media, but I don't think young people will. We're not stupid, because we know that we need actual change and actual structure to make a change. And campaigning and
all right, we seem to be having some trouble there with Albina's line.
The change that we want.
Right. Brando?
Okay.
Closing thoughts?
Yeah. Sorry, I was muted. I'm saying that I think that today the world is so complicated and so fragmented that young people effort to build a global movements and global fights for change is extremely important. It's a phenomenon that has been fueled, as we discussed, also by the social media, the breaking of barriers for the flow of information. I think it's very important. As we discussed how we need to make this more informed, how to make young people more conscious of their role. But I want to end up saying that, however, it's very important that we see an awakening of younger generations that are today the ones that need to shape the world of the future. And if they don't react, they will just keep what is there. And I think that many things need to be changed instead. And so their role will be very, very important.
All right. Last comments, Dirk.
What can I say? Brando is a member of Partido Democratico. They are close allies of our Social Democratic Party. So I absolutely agree with his comments.
All right, then. So that was nice. Thank you all so much for joining us. This has really been really nice because we got to understand not just a perspective from the continent, but across the world. And if I can say one thing, we all think so alike. I have seen the same issues in a recurring theme found in almost all that you have said, from climate change to mental health, to employment generation and to sustainable living. I think those were the four key things that really dominated this discussion. And it's lovely to hear from all of you. I also want to thank FICCI for putting forward this platform to have such a beautiful connect with all of you. That's it from me. Thank you so much to all of you who tuned in to get a glimpse into what the future is gonna look like. You never know, we could be speaking to future prime ministers and presidents in the world. So here's on that note, thank you all so much. See you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are live now.
Hello everyone. Let's begin with the fireside chat between Mr. Ritesh Agrawal, founder and group CEO, Oyo Hotels and Homes Private Limited, along with Ms. Ruchika Bhatia, news anchor and deputy bureau chief, ET Now. I would like to hand it over to Ruchi ma'am. Thank you.
Many thanks for that, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I am Ruchi Bhatia. Over the last 2 days at FICCI's Global Young Leader Summit, you must have heard from a whole host of young leaders across various walks of lives. And today, in this fireside chat, we have somebody who's one of the youngest entrepreneurs from the startup ecosystem in conversation with Ritesh Agarwal. Ritesh, appreciate you taking your time out and speaking with us today here at this event. Let me first begin by asking you about, we've read about your journey from Orissa to running India's first hospitality unicorn. You recently said that for building a startup, you need to have a microscope in one hand and a telescope on the other hand. But I'm sure either of them could not have really prepared you for a situation like this. We're in the midst of a pandemic. It has really created a big upheaval across lives as well. Really unforeseen, if I should call it that. As a leader, as a young entrepreneur, what have been your learnings during these times? How big a challenge really has been the COVID-19 times?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here, Ruchi. And to begin with, I must say that the COVID times have been, probably the most transformational period for both me and for our entire organization. Primarily because it feels like all the work we did for the last 5 years, we've probably learned a lot more than that just in the last 1 year. I saw for the first time the pandemic impacting us in early part of this year, around January or February. As I saw that impact, it felt like it was going to be just a China-specific problem. Very soon, it became a global challenge. And we were very quickly then able to make sure that we put together a strong team and started responding to the crisis by means of a combination of three critical things, which is cash, cost, and care in the reverse order. That is making sure that care is the most critical because it's just not an economic crisis we were dealing with. We were also dealing with a pandemic, which was impacting lives of our customers, employees, hotel partners, our ecosystem. But at the same time, it was important that we built and responded to it in the form of every business details possible. To begin with, I think in the form of care, we tried to bring all kinds of possibilities to our ecosystem. We were the first in the US, in Philippines, in India, in Japan, in Indonesia, to bring free stays for first responders. It did extremely well. We've received blessings from, I think, lakhs of first responders who we got spaces for. We combined that by making sure that we ran a 24/7 helpline for our people through this period of time. On the other hand, in the interest of making sure that we were preparing for the substantial hit in business that this brought, our gross margin dollars fell by upwards of 66% in the month of April versus that of January, which was a very substantial drop. As per that, we were able to make sure that we had to make immediate changes. Part of that was making sure that all the controllable costs we made changes on, like that of marketing, CapEx, and all the other similar investments. Very soon we realized that that was not going to be enough. We also had to make probably one of the toughest decisions in my career in terms of being able to furlough some of our Oyopreneurs. This we announced in April 14th. We tried to do it in the most respectful manner possible, including that of making sure that we gave around 1.5% of our company to all our departing Oyopreneurs. Shares that traded at upwards of $50,000 last for $0.14 a piece, so that people genuinely became partners. But that was the beginning. We put our entire company, including myself, we were speaking to our customers, partners, employees, ecosystems, policymakers, and learning about what kind of consumer demand will be there in the future. We focused on road trips. We focused on weekend getaways. We focused on small and medium business travel. We focused on staycations, including that of work from anywhere campaigns in Himachal, Kerala, Denmark for our European customers, and so on. And due to that, we are now back to around 85% of pre-COVID levels in gross margin dollars. So still 15% down and not fully out of the way yet, because the second wave of the pandemic is still looming across the world. But, I think clearly we are in a much relatively better situation than we were in April, but we're fighting every day.
We're fighting every day. I think that should be the big takeaway from your first answer. But Ritesh, if I can come to you, you said that you've taken some tough decisions during these times, not just shrinking your staff, but the company also facing an overall drop in the revenues as well in the financial year for the first time that we saw since its launch in 2013. Valuations too have taken a dip, if I should put it like that. A lot of people have been talking about how the valuations for OYO at one point of time were very steep. Having said that, what's been the biggest lesson from this? As an entrepreneur, I'm sure you had to be very nimble-footed during these times and ensure that you were able to move with the time. So how important is that lesson? And besides that, what's been the big lesson besides, of course, being nimble-footed?
Sure. Look, I think like you were discussing earlier, if there is so many realms of possibilities, right? If you look at the last 5, 6, 7 crises, if there is one thing you would have never imagined is hotels having to be shut down. That's something that nobody would even build into their financial projections or plans, even the worst crisis.
True.
I think given that we had to make sure that we were nimble-footed, it was almost as if you were running full speed and then there was a wall put in front of you and said that you have to stop, but stop in a respectful manner. And when the wall goes back, you have to make sure you're ready to run again. And you see through that period. I think, so it was tough. But in my view, there were 3 to 4 things that were very beneficial for us. The first is the fantastic partnership demonstrated by my leadership. We have some of the best leaders, our CEO of India, Southeast Asia, Europe, US, everybody stood up and took charge of the challenge. They didn't just say that because things are tough, let's just survive. They said, well, we have to make sure that we make the decisions that is required to be made in today's day and time. But how do we make sure that we come out stronger? Sure, hospitality industry has multiple players and almost everybody's, especially the ones who are publicly listed, everybody's valuations have been impacted, but some stocks are doing much better in comparison to the others. The difference between those are the companies which responded to the crisis by making sure that they focused on the consumer sets and the merchant sets which were required in this new generation. So being able to go back to our roots of being a focused consumer backwards company. I'll give you a very interesting example or a story of it. We launched this Sanitize Stays campaign and we said this is, we're going to bring safe experiences for our customers. And we ran weekly reviews, right? Like I told you, all of us are talking to customers. So 60% of the customers said they believed in it. But 40% of the customers said that they didn't believe in it. They said, well, sure, you may say sanitize stay. Everybody is now saying they have some sanitization. How do we know you're doing something right? So we gave 3 options. We said, we're going to put labels wherever we do the sanitization. We will keep the room empty for 1 day, or the third one is we'll sanitize before your eyes. 90% of the customers said, if you sanitize before my eyes, I'll trust that a lot more. In 2 weeks, we launched Sanitize Before Your Eyes campaign with one of our hotel partners, Mr. Sonu Sood, who's also done really well for the community ecosystem. And this 30% customers who we were not seeing an uptake in, we suddenly started seeing strong reservations coming from them. This kind of ability of being able to constantly execute by means of learning from customers and partners without having to wait for months and quarters is something that this crisis brought us back to. Probably the last one is reflection. We were, as leaders, we spent a lot of time reflecting on saying, what could we have done better and what are we doing right? Whatever we could have done better, double down on the learnings of those. Whatever we are doing right, double down on doing the same thing all over again.
Ritesh, the fact that you're saying that at one point of time you were running full throttle and you pretty much had a wall put in front of you, and that's pretty much visible with the fact that OYO did massive expansion in various markets between 2017 to 2019, and the year 2020 was the one where we did see the COVID pandemic impact as well. The hope was that markets such as Europe, US, Southeast Asia will also provide steady growth for OYO. Does that mean that now, given the fact that we're in the midst of the pandemic, you have decided to rework a lot of your initial plans as well? Will you apply brakes on your expansion plans significantly?
So I think, Ruchi, crisis brings clarity. And for us, the clarity that this has brought is that we have clear visibility. Today, OYO operates in substantial amount of markets already. We operate in around 80 countries. And our core 3 regions where we are market leaders or market leading in is India, Southeast Asia, and Northern Europe. And the two markets where we are becoming clear challengers are in China and the United States. Our view is, of course, we operate in other markets like Latin America, Japan, and few other geographies, but these are the 5 focus markets that we're going after: India, Southeast Asia, Europe, US, and China. And within these, our aspiration is wherever we are market leading or market leaders, which is India, Southeast Asia, and Europe, we would want to expand our lead by going deeper rather than that of broader. And in markets such as China and US, we want to continuously improve our product and services to make sure that we continue to win market share because of our product experiences. So I think we are broad enough to not have to expand anymore. Currently, the focus is making sure that we consolidate our gains and go deeper in the geographies where we have market leadership or challenger status.
Ritesh, what gives you hope during these times? A lot of entrepreneurs, their fuel is hope, but their fuel is the fact that they want to grow more, they want to learn more. What is giving you hope at this point of time?
3 things. The first is you can have a very tough week. You may receive a lot of escalations. But when I take every week a couple of hours to speak to our customers and our partners, whenever I listen to them, I feel that in our minds, we may be so worried, but these customers are saying, I'm so bored out of living in my home for 4 months. I was recently speaking to 2 customers in Indonesia. They're saying we're so bored out of living at home for last 4 months. We have already reserved, OYO rooms for 15 days in the upcoming month. When I speak to our hotel partners, they say that, you may be very worried. We are actually in the process of making sure that we add an additional segment in our hotel. I think when I constantly listen to these people, our core ecosystem, I was speaking to our large travel partners last week, 12 of the India's largest travel partners, and when I was listening to them, they had so much conviction in all kinds of business, domestic travel, Umrah, all kinds of potential opportunities. When I listen to them, that gives me hope. And the second thing that gives me hope is I have been through much more challenging times. When you have $1 billion of cash in your balance bank, you have thousands of OYOpreneurs willing to fight and see through this crisis together. You have a consumer ecosystem of 100 million users. I can tell you that that is, the pandemic may feel like a big challenge, but that's not as big as a challenge when you have 1 week of cash left when you're starting your company, because frankly, that's every week of survival that you're fighting for. So I have seen through those days. So these days don't scare me as much.
What kind of, talk to us about, because I'm sure a lot of people who are joining us here are starting up their own startups. I want to understand from you, what were the kind of conversations that you had with your investors during the pandemic times? I, for one, was having a conversation with Mohit Bhatnagar of Sequoia some days back, and he said that among a lot of things that you factored in before pandemic for a lot of companies, COVID was definitely not one of them. So talk to us about what kind of conversations you had with your investors, and how important is the support from investors during a time like this?
So Mohit is one of our investors, and he's been great through the crisis. We get to talk to each other very often. And, I have seen that 2 important learnings. The first is, I think it's very critical for the management to take the leadership and communicate their vision of how they plan to see through this crisis and what the new world will look like. But at the same time, socialize at a board level. Our company has many shareholders now, and we have a very large and majority of our board members as a single segment are now actually independents or non-executives, including Betsy, Troy, and Steve Albright. So we engaged with most of them and tried to share our vision and got all their opinions. A lot of those opinions were helpful for us ourselves to be able to make the right decisions. And after that, the only focus was saying, basis our vision of how do we see through this crisis and what the world will look like after this. Where are we? What's working and what's not working? Whatever's working, let's double down. Whatever's not working, let's learn and make changes. I think that's sort of how our engagement with our board was. I think typically the good news is if you can keep the principles of engagement aligned with everybody, and that's what we did. We aligned all our board and shareholder principles in saying that, 1, we have to get out of this crisis. 2nd, we don't want to get out of this crisis just as a survivor, but as a thriver. and we have to build a certain outcome in 3 or 5 years of period. These were 3 principles we aligned with all of our shareholders and our board members. Once that was done, every decision was followed through with this principle. So then it was not about who's sharing the decision. Everybody could just opinion basis the principles. So that's what I and our management set out on day one, and it's probably helped us.
While I do understand the point that you said that you don't have to just survive this period, you have to thrive in this period. But as a young leader, does the expectation, the fact that you have such a big company with so many people working for you, such plans as well, and if they don't work out, does that add a lot of burden on your shoulders?
So I think definitively I am cognizant of the responsibility and the expectation that a lot of people, have on me. And I'm also, I use that less as a pain. I use that more as a strength. That is, given there are so many people who expect, and I have to work hard to make, all our Oyopreneurs, hotel partners, customers, all of them proud. I think I use that as an energizer to me, saying that, agar itne log hame madad karne ke liye tayar hain, then there is no chance that we can, not create the positive impact that we have to. And I'm of course thankful to my management who have been true partners to me in this entire process, where we've built this, whole recovery period together. And of course, we built the company together as well before that.
Right. Ritesh, having said that, you were talking about recovery, that you're seeing, trends like staycation really picking up, people working. In fact, I was in conversation with Mr. Bajaj of Airbnb as well a few days ago, and he said that we're seeing a lot of people now working from different locations. COVID has certainly, shrunk a lot of other barriers as well. And now the fact that we're all able to work from home, you can pretty much work from anywhere. All you need is, a good internet connection. So what are the kind of trends that you're seeing, and where from here in terms of recovery?
I think what we're seeing is there is a substantial trend towards people turning away from the urban destinations to more leisure destinations for work, leisure, and so on. And people are staying there for a longer period of time. They're not staying there for a weekend or a week. People are booking for at least a few weeks, going with a family and spending time there. So we launched a campaign called Chal Pahad, which is, basically inspiring people to travel to the hills in the north, the south, the east, and so on. And the uptake was massive. We are seeing a lot of travel uptake in destinations, which are the hill stations primarily, and increasingly the beach destinations as well. The second trend that we are seeing is the weekend getaways are doing really well. So for example, the Chikmangalurs, the Alibags, and so on are seeing substantial amount of consumer uptake, or even Rajasthan for that matter from Delhi. We are also seeing that people are booking more holiday homes rather than that of large hotels. So small hotels and holiday homes are the new treat of the town. So people are saying that imagine being in a 200-room hotel with 50 people at the lobby. So scary, right? You'd rather be at a 10 or 20-room hotel or a little vacation home, so it's not as risky. And last but not the least, people want to make sure that they don't want to be locked in 4 walls of their houses. They want to be out. They want to be out and about. So we're seeing that not just in India, but globally, the travel trends are looking up, unless there have been government mandated lockdowns in some of the countries across the world.
Right, and of course, the second wave of COVID as well that we're kind of now talking about. Having said that, you said that we're seeing recovery of close to 85% from the pre-COVID level. When do you see getting back to the 100% level and then growing from there? What are the factors that this is going to be contingent upon?
I think we are in India and Southeast Asia, which are very critical geographies for us. December is the holiday season. It's a big season, December, January, and February. I think a lot of hopes are pinned on how these 2 to 3 months look like. My view is that, of course, at the same time, we have large businesses which are also operating in Europe, United States, and China. We're also tracking those results. Depending on how lockdowns and the second wave of impact turns about, we will know what is the timing taken for this 85% to get to 100%. But that's not very far away. I think the big question will be, when does this 100% then start growing again to substantial scale on the gross margin dollar levels? I think in that we anticipate probably next year, early to mid next year is a timing when we could potentially start seeing some amount of growth there. I think in the Q2 or Q3 is when I believe that the next summer season is going to be a very critical period for seeing what the next segment of growth will look like. So at this point of time, we're just looking at the markets and responding to it. I think the consumer demand is looking very strong. It really depends on how government mandated restrictions look like in the times to come. And depending on those restrictions, I think we will see either recovery or recovery plus substantial growth in the next upcoming months.
What's going to be your one big message to young leaders, young entrepreneurs?
I like to believe that we are also building ourselves. So we are trying to take messages ourselves at this time, Ruchi. But I think if there is one learning I've had in my career, both pre-COVID and in COVID, it is, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. All you got to do is keep digging. I think 5 months back, everybody said that, will travel businesses see through this crisis? Today, you're seeing that the best travel businesses in the world, like that of Airbnb, and I would believe that ours and Choice Hotels are all able to not just come out of this crisis and are actually seeing a lot of tailwinds in this period of time. So my belief is those tailwinds are the one reason because of which we will see through this crisis and see through it well and good.
Okay, all right. On that note, Ritesh, appreciate you taking your time out and speaking with us today at this event. And I'm glad that you were able to take your time and, of course, give us a lot of insight into these COVID times and how you were able to outmaneuver some of the vulnerabilities that you saw during these times. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the FICCI entrepreneurs, and thank you, Ruchi, for making time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Oh, where is it?
Chandan, can you play the video? I'm logging in from a different system. There is nothing over here. Megha, can you play the video? Any video, like anything. I have logged in from a different system. I don't have anything.
Give me 2 minutes. Huh?
Yes, okay.
नहीं चल रहा यार
Ma'am,
कोई बात नहीं
it says video options and then it is not allowing me to ask ma'am to show her video. Which video do you want to lock the video?
नीचे वो start button
Ma'am, there's a
start button is working only in mine. I don't know why. I'll have to go to the settings. Oof, yaar, this stupid Cisco WebEx, I tell you.
Yeah, ma'am, did you download WebEx or have you joined like from the link?
No, I have.
Okay.
I have Cisco WebEx, I use it, but you pata nahi kya
Actually, how is
hai,
this backdrop looking? Please tell me, or do we need to get it changed because
Backdrop is looking fine, Chaitali. Now don't do anything about the backdrop. It's looking
okay.
quite
She
okay.
sent us 2 options. So we'll use this one only, right? We won't use that one.
You use this. This is the best option to use. And we can send it to all the panelists with a request if they'll go ahead and use this.
Yeah. So we'll put it that way. We'll encourage you to use this, or if they want to use their own Nabard or something like
Some
that.
people won't, but we can request them.
Yeah.
We'll have to tell everyone. So because I know that, I don't know whether Sanjeev and Ribia and all were invited to this meeting, and I think there was a lot of confusion because of the team's invite. So people
Yes.
would have probably not attended the. Of course, we need to keep being briefed in.
Yes, so ma'am, Sanjeev was invited for this meeting. Ribya, Sanjeev, like the whole team, our IC team was
Yeah, they might
invited.
have been on the other team's invite, right?
Meenakshi, I have an idea. What we can do is that for 2-3 days, let's do our team meeting on WebEx
WebEx,
so that
correct.
everybody gets familiar with the platform
Yes,
for the
yes,
main
fantastic
meeting.
idea.
Sure, next week.
I think that's a good idea.
Yes, we can say
Finally.
Yeah, Vega, very good idea. I was actually thinking, that I was going to tell people, invite me for the next few days for WebEx meetings. So we get used to this platform.
It's actually quite easy. It's not that difficult.
See, I mean, we don't really have to get used to it, but we can do it because we already, we can test it out on Monday for sure.
Okay. So I'll just ask Chandan to.
अच्छा video नहीं play हो रहा अभी?
No, he's on phone.
Can I try and play the video, or is it
Yes,
very
ma'am.
difficult?
No, ma'am. Just see at the bottom it says share content. It says share. So you click share. You can share anything, whatever you have.
Let's try. I'm not promising because my system seems to be. No, I don't think I'll be able to do it. My system seems to be very slow.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Natasha, ma'am is sharing something.
I'm trying.
Welcome to this valedictory session of what has been a fantastic 3 days led by the young leaders in FICCI, led by Shashwat Goenka and Aditya. In this case, Bagri, right, who is the director in the Bagri's group. He'll be speaking in the next session. But a very warm welcome to the validity session. We are delighted to have each one of you here who represent different segments of leadership across different countries. It is indeed a pleasure to invite Dr. Sangeeta Reddy, President FICCI and Joint Managing Director Apollo Hospital Enterprises, to deliver the opening remarks. Over to you, Dr. Reddy.
Good evening to all of you and namaste. It's a real pleasure to be in your presence today. Let me begin by congratulating all of you for having such a wonderful program, for sharing thoughts, for innovating, for ideating, for blue sky thinking, for your passion and commitment to the country and to humanity at large, and of course, the wonderful power of youth. You are our future, you are our elixir, you're the ones who keep us happy and motivated about everything that we do. And I think very often it's the youth of the world that ensures that the adults of the world do things in a more responsible manner, because we realize that we do have our position for a short time and we are merely holding it to hand over to all of you. And we are excited and inspired by the thought process of the youth. I think all of us across the world have been through an unprecedented pandemic. The pressure, the strain that it has put on lives and on livelihoods has been something like a war of our generation. And I hope that in your generation, you will not see anything of this kind or this nature ever again in the world. And a lot of that is predisposed on our ability to do risk mitigation, our ability to think from a multilateral environment, inclusive and sustainable perspective, so that we create a better world for our youth. I just want to say that at multiple points in my life, I have been very inspired by the power of youth. And no one said it better than Swami Vivekananda when he said a few wholehearted, sincere, and energetic young men and women can do more than a whole mob. So that is the power that you hold in your hands. And I think IT has been a great leveler. And you are the generation that's grown up with IT. You understand it, you've imbibed it, it's completely part of you. So as India opens up to the opportunities of the world, and as our neighbors open up as well, I think this is the time for us to use the power of artificial intelligence to imbibe whether it's AI, ML, any of these, to create a more inclusive and a more beautiful world. I want to congratulate you on this fantastic summit, which you've pulled off using this virtual platform, the great speakers that you've had. My special appreciation to Shashwat, who is the leader. He chairs the FICCI Young Leaders Forum, and a very big, support, a great mind and a power behind the enthusiasm of youth that has come into FICCI. And I look forward to a lot more from you, Shashwat, in the years to come. FICCI has spent significant time in working with the government, first on the entire health response and immediately afterwards on methodologies to revive the economy, work on people being safe. We worked on MSME. We had a special women's program. We've done a lot with science and technology. We've looked at supply chains, logistics, and sector by sector re-energizing, so that despite the fact that our economy contracted by 24% in the first quarter, we look forward to a year of very positive growth in a two-digit range in the next coming financial year. And I look forward to the youth of our country really pitching in and being innovative and creative about that. I would like to add my welcome to two very significant youth icons who are with us today. And I welcome His Excellency Lyonpo Ughindorji, the Honourable Minister, Ministry of Labour and Human Resources from the Royal Government of Bhutan, the Kingdom of Bhutan. You are a very valuable neighbour, and the whole world respects the beautiful ideology that you have of measuring your gross domestic happiness even before you look at your GDP. And I think that is a lesson to the whole world that we take with us. I'm also very happy to acknowledge and welcome another young leader, Sri Aditya Thakri, the Honourable Cabinet Minister for Tourism, Environment and Protocol in the Government of Maharashtra. As two young chief guests, I think you have a very important responsibility to carry the message of this inclusive, positive world, and to carry the message and to inspire the youth to live up to these expectations. We live in a material world that's been turned on its head, and people have begun to relook at the entire value system and relook at global supply chains. But ultimately, it's humanity that counts, and it's youth that inspires us. So congratulations, Shashwat. May your young leaders grow and evolve. And I think it's a great conclusion to a very, very powerful program that you've put together. All the very best in all your careers. And if there's anything that FICCI as an organization or I personally can do in any way, please know that I'm just a phone call away. All the very best and namaste. Good luck.
Thank you, President Dr. Reddy. And, just for that really inspirational tone that you've set. And just to she is a real champion of youth. Even in FICCI, she keeps telling me, get people under 30, get the young guys, use them to transform the organization. They'll inspire, old people like me.
And by this I meant,
thank you.
Sorry, Dilip, by this I meant young guys and girls. So.
Yes. Okay. So thank you for that there. And now it's really a pleasure to invite Mr. Shashwat Goenka, who is the chair of the FICCI Young Leaders Forum and also the sector head of retail and FMCG of the RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. So Shashwat, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chinoy. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the valedictory session of the FICCI Global Young Leaders Summit 2020, Youth Icons Inspiring New Generations. Let me add my own welcome to that of our president, Dr. Reddy. Dr. Reddy is someone who has inspired me throughout this year as I lead FICCI Young Leaders, and she has really pushed me beyond my boundaries to be able to organize events such as these. So as you all know, India has a large youth population and therefore a large demographic dividend. With India emerging as the fastest growing market in the world, its large youth population can ensure a promising entrepreneurial future for our country. FICCI recognizes the aspirations of this younger generation as well as their zeal to excel and make a difference. It is this spirit that has driven FICCI to form the Young Leaders Forum, an exclusive forum of young achievers from diverse fields of business and industry. The objective is to lay a foundation to encourage the youth of the nation to indulge in FICCI's mainstay activities, to recognize and reinforce their role in the sustainable development of our country. Through this global summit, we have aimed to provide young entrepreneurs and leaders a platform to promote awareness and discuss upon new ideas as well. At today's valedictory session, we have the privilege of having with us two great personalities who embody leadership and the youth. And they espouse every admirable and inspirational characteristic of the youth that we have discussed in our sessions over the last 3 days. And I could not have asked for a better valedictory session, made special by these two extremely special youth icons. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Lyonpo Ughindorji, Honourable Minister, Ministry of Labour and Human Resources, Royal Government of Bhutan. His Excellency is someone who has led through his thoughts and has played a crucial role in transforming the Kingdom of Bhutan. We also have the honour of having with us Mr. Aditya Thakri, Honourable Cabinet Minister of Tourism, Environment, Protocol, Government of Maharashtra. A great thinker, he is a man with a vision. Someone who is helping transform not just the state of Maharashtra, but also the country. One of the youngest and possibly brightest leaders in the country. He is practical, dynamic, and systematic, and surely a huge personal inspiration for me. I am keen to listen to the exchange of ideas being proposed during today's session and hope that each of you will be left with enough food for thought and I'm sure a lot of inspiration to achieve your highest potential. With that, thank you, and over to you, Mr. Chinoy.
Thank you for welcome and your own welcome to each of the speakers. Without any further ado, may I now invite Shri Aditya Thakri, Honourable Cabinet Minister, Environment Protocol, Government of Maharashtra. As you said, a great visionary and thinker and a young leader for his keynote address. So, Mr. Aditya Thakri, over to you.
Thank you, Shaswat, for that rather kind and generous introduction, and thank you, Dr. Reddy, for organizing this conclave, because honestly, it's something that we've wanted to be a part of. And when I see the list of luminaries and the other leaders a part of this, when I saw the entire list, we have been dealing with COVID response in the last 8-9 months. And quite honestly, I wasn't as stressed about that as when I was told to speak at this conclave and the valedictory address, because Chinoyji, as you can see, both of us, of course, are young ministers, but and as much as I envy Minister Dorji's background and the open space he's sitting in, it's something that we feel an honor to be a part of, because this is something that we have a lot to take from. Because when we speak about global leadership and youth leadership, there are multiple ideas that come to our mind, and especially in a time like 2020, when all of us thought that we would all be superpowers, we would be probably having some colonies on the moon, we're yet learning to wash our hands and wear masks and probably grapple with a couple of sanitizers in our hand. But along with that, if you see the global leadership perspective, we've had, especially all of us who are in our 30s, we've seen 3 decades, and ever since we learned what is the world, we've learned about globalization as the first word that had an interaction with us when we speak about international politics and diplomacy. So we've grown up in the 90s, and all the 90s kids out here would realize that what a big word globalization was when IT was booming, when we had computers just rushing into our country, when we had websites and all of that. But today, when we're in 2020, we've had 2 whole ideas of globalization. Of course, one globalization, which is about breaking barriers, going beyond borders, about free trade, about internationalization of education, about healthcare, and having cross exchange of not just ideas, but trade, technology, commerce, tourism, healthcare, environment, all of that. Whereas on the other hand, in the last 5 to 6 years, we've also seen countries speak about nationalism, speak about looking inwards as well, speak about renegotiating trade treaties and travel and tourism. So we've seen that in Brexit, we've seen that in America, we've seen that in Europe, and in our own country, we've seen a spurt of nationalism. And the question really is, with these 2 perpetual themes, not just in the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, But globalization and nationalism, these two themes have been perpetual in the long arc of human history. We've always seen them. If you read history, anyone who's a student of history would always see alliances that were global and then wars that were global. Alliances that really went on for a long time, and then we also had wars that came on nationalism. But I think one more theme that has been perpetual and has been really the driving force behind globalization and behind nationalism is youth. And I think that's why this summit really is very, very important, because when we speak about a global leadership summit, we can break these words into three things. Global youth leadership. Global, of course, like I said, what is global? How would global be defined when we go ahead in our own lifetimes rather than any other point of, say, the history of the future? Again, in this, what is leadership? Because leadership, is it about listening to popular sentiment, populist sentiment, or also trying to break this and go ahead to see what is really good for us, what is good for the country, what is good for the world, for the society, for trade, commerce, and what really defines what is good? I think that. And thirdly, like I said, youth, because if you speak about globalization, the 90s youth was all about globalization, about breaking barriers, like I said, bringing down differences. Today, more or less, we have a couple of languages, we have a couple of technologies that really transcend all barriers. The fact that some of us also speaking in English, and there are also countries around the world who would be linking in, and FICCI members would be linking in. You know, we have a shared future, we have a shared present, and we have a shared past, which is these commonalities which bring together the best of the civilizations, if we call it the best, and we move ahead. But this is really what I think should define what global youth leadership is. Like I said, you know, when we speak about the immediate past or the long arc of history, or whatever we look at the future, there are a couple of common themes that we really need to think about, deliberate, debate, argue over, because all of these things will, of course, define what the next 10, 15, 20 years are going to be. One is trade, religion, transport, and of course, another common theme is wars. We've had youth in every generation. We've had youth ever since, I mean, everyone's born young and as babies, and then we grow. But it is when we are young that we are really passionate about this, the fire in the belly to either go to war or to make peace or to drive trade, commerce, to get educated, all of these things. And of course, even religion, that has been a major, major driving force for all of us. What does it affect? Of course, it affects our economies, whether we go up, whether we grow at the growth rate that we intend to do. That depends on what the standard of education or the quality of education is, how many entrepreneurs do we have, how many people are willing to take the risks and go ahead. The other, of course, is we can go down, and we have also had times where we faced a huge recession. In times of that, do we really build our economies, or do we go to wars? Do we have an expansionist view of our own country, or do we have a view of supporting expansion through friendships? There could be also aid that we're giving to our neighboring countries or to the alliances that we are part of. You know, we've seen the Cold War pacts and alliances, we've seen pre-Cold War pacts and alliances, we've seen the failure of the League of Nations, and then we've seen the strategic build of the United Nations. We've also seen ASEAN, we've seen BRICS. So I think these are some of the things that we really largely need to think of when we think of the youth and how do we go ahead. Because finally, like I said, all governments, all leaderships need youth and I would say experience, Hosh and Josh together. And that balance, I think, is very crucial. You know, that is something we need to really see. Again, like I said, these themes have always been common throughout. Globalization, nationalism, wars, transport, religion, trade, commerce, economy. We've had Alexander cross the seas. We've had Cleopatra's kingdom also having people from other countries. We've seen Indian coins in Mesopotamia. We've seen, the British deal with China. So there's never been a time in the world that we've been patriotic or nationalistic and yet been connected to the world. In today's world, where ideologies largely depend on whether we're open or closed, I think it is a youth of every country that once again has to think of what the next decade is going to be. We come to a point which is 2020 when we're looking outside the window. And like I said, I just clicked a picture, I have about 6 or 7 sanitizers around me on the desk, and that is the new normal. We've been confined to spaces, staying indoors in the last 8 months. We've worn masks. We've almost consumed sanitizers as I don't think any time before in the history of human nature. I don't even think a lot of us knew what sanitizers were at least a year ago. So then what is this new normal? Do we stay with the new normal? One is COVID, of course, that has come out of a zoonotic disease, and that's also one of the behavioral patterns that human life has had a negative impact on the rest of the humans. But we have to think today of how we're going to go ahead. It is said that this is the last decade that we can really create an impact that could be either positive or negative in terms of a global impact on the world. The SDGs that we have, the Sustainable Development Goal, the 2030 SDGs. I think this is something we really need to think of, because when we are talking of leadership, when we are talking of leading as a young woman or a man, a young lady or a gentleman or a young leader as such, we will have multiple questions that are put to us. We have by whom, rather, because obviously we have ourselves divided into regions, religions, smaller areas, probably districts. We'll have ourselves divided into 2 or 3 spectrums of broad political theory. You could either be left wing or right wing, you could be open or closed, you could be a centrist, you could be left centrist, right centrist. All of these things really don't matter when it comes in the larger scheme of things, because by doesn't really matter. There will be leadership any which ways. By who doesn't matter, like I said. How? Of course, we have different modes of government, and that will keep going on. Human history has seen we've gone into kingdoms, we've gone into democracies, we've gone into almost everything that has possibly been tried by the human civilization. The question really is why? I think that is what we need to focus on, because by whom, how, all of that is irrelevant when we speak of why. Because why should a young person really lead the country? Why should there be leadership? You could also come across books that say, okay, we could just be in a utopian world where we don't need leadership, where we are all collective leaders of a society, and we're going together, we're going as, say, shareholders of a larger thing called the civilization, where everyone has a say, and that is what the vote is. But when we talk of why, I think that is where the question lies with all of us. The leadership for the youth. Again, we need to define what youth leadership is. Is youth leadership to be defined by an age group? Then what is young? Is below 50 young? Is below 35 young? Is below 50 young? Is below 60 young? Because people are getting young day by day. And as the longevity of life with healthcare, of course, COVID kept apart, is increasing day by day. How do we define what is youth leadership? Personally, what I feel what youth leadership is keeping in front of our own eyes. Youth leadership would be what we think is for the youth. And by youth, I don't define an age group. I define the future, which begins today. Every action that is about growing, be it growing in terms of an economy, be it growing in terms of a civilization, be it growing in terms of coexistence, be it growing in terms of a country, society, world at large. If there is a future goal in front of our eyes, I think that is what truly youth is. And the youth is always excited, has fire in the belly, and is trying to achieve a certain dream that is in the distant future. I think any leader who's trying to do that is youth leadership. Let's not put ourselves into shackles of age groups or types of youth leadership. It is about the future starting from today. What are the actions that we're taking today that we will go ahead in the future and take? For example, let me just give a couple of examples of our own state, Maharashtra, where the Chief Minister, Mr. Aditya Thakri, has taken a couple of decisions in the last 8 months that have really been for the future. And starting from today, for example, the MOUs that we've signed in June were worth 70,000 crores in Maharashtra. The MOUs that we signed in early November were about 35,000 crores in Maharashtra. And now, as we go ahead, another 35,000 to 40,000 crores that we will sign by December. But none of these are just MOUs on paper. 90% of the companies that are investing in Maharashtra have already got land allocated, permissions done, and will start work soon. Beyond that, we've not just looked at the industrial sector, we've also looked at the environment. You must have heard, and many of you who live in Mumbai or have seen Mumbai, getting RA, 808 acres in a city like Mumbai to be declared a forest with all the thriving biodiversity and the endemic species that exist in RA. I think this is a huge move for carbon neutrality and for a green growth along with the industrial growth. So we'll have industries coming in and we'll have environment being protected. Personally, for me, like I said, in terms of tourism and hospitality, in the last 1 month, we have given industry status to hospitality sector and hotels, which has been a major boost to that. But along with that, we had 70 application forms To set up a hotel or restaurant, 70 licenses and 15 NOCs required from multiple departments. Within a month's time, we've brought it down from 70 applications to 8 applications, 70 licenses to 10 licenses, and 15 NOCs to 9 NOCs. I think this is where we're encouraging the service sector, the industrial sector, and the environment. I think these are some of the things that we need to really look at. Coming to the few points that I really want to stress on is when we speak about the youth, when we speak about going into the future, of course, one of the topmost priorities for us would be, and we have right to education in a country, but we need to have right to quality education in our country. The youth leadership really must stress on what education is. Are we really going to the last person in our society, reaching out with quality education, which will not only enable the person to get a job, but also to create a job and to create a livelihood with a family and live a sustainable life for centuries ahead? Because right now what we're thinking is on immediate terms. What is the next 5 minutes? What is the next 5 years? Can we really not think about the next 50 years? And with disruptions coming into our life, we need to think out of the box. I mean, think of it. Shashwat, who would have thought that in 2007, before 2007, someone could be an Instagram influencer? Someone could be an influencer on Twitter. We have all got followers and we've got all these influencers and we had things like TikTok or we've got Reels. Who would have thought that social media for politicians, for industrialists, for CSR, for even perception building would have been a big thing before 2007? After the advent of the smartphone and the Apple, we almost had a boom in digital age. So I think that is something we need to really think of. The economy, of course, how do we move ahead? How do we balance the economy and growth or development with sustainable development? If you've noticed all my posts on social media or all my speeches or interactions, I've spoken about development, but it's always been with a prefix with the word sustainable. And that also comes from Bhutan because I've heard of the former Prime Minister and this current government taking ahead the legacy of carbon neutrality. I think that's a very, very beautiful concept. The fact that Dr. Reddy stressed on the happiness index, I think, when we travel anywhere around the world, the first smile that comes onto our face is when we land into a country or a city. And when we smell or breathe in fresh air and that smile, oh, what beautiful air. I think that is what sustainable development is. That smile along with the hard work, that is where we need to really think of what our economy is going to be. Thirdly, I think civilization, because when we look at the world today, like I said, it's in a funny dilemma. Are we global or are we fractured into nationalism? Can we find a mid path that is both patriotic, nationalistic, and global? Can we have people loving their own countries and loving the planet at the same time? Can we have actions that are local, having a global impact at the same time? Can we have conversations with countries around the world that keep disputes as disputes, but largely go beyond that to find resolutions to things that can be in a harmonious way and having a symbiotic relationship? I think these are things that we need to really look at, because when I think of Javed Akhtar Saab's song, which is Panchi Nadiya Pavan ke Jhoke, Koi Sarhad na inhe roke. When a thing like nature that has been around for billions of years finds no borders and yet is endemic to a lot of spaces, and when I say endemic, it is really local to a certain thing. Like, for example, RA. We have an endemic species in RA. When we saved as the government, when we saved this hill called Anjaneri, which is supposed to be the birthplace of Lord Hanuman. Lord Hanuman is worshipped around the world. Anjaneri is famous around the world. Nature is common around the world, and yet we have one species of a plant, Ceropeca anjaneri, which is still endemic there. So we have a lot of endemic species that are in symbiotic relationships with other species around the world, and their interaction really keeps the nature and environment going. So I think this civilization that we could really bring about is something we need to look at, and that is probably what youth leadership would be. And lastly, of course, the environment. COVID is the biggest learning that we can have as the human race. I don't think World War I, World War II, the partition, or any other event in human history, at least as far as we remember, has brought the world to its knees or to a standstill like it has brought it today. We've been in our homes. A lot of us have lost jobs. A couple of us are also disoriented in terms of what is the future of humanity. I think this is where environment really plays a part. We've also seen a lot of places where We've had peacocks on the roads in Mumbai. We've had cleaner air. We've seen cleaner water. I think it's also time to realize that when we say, let's save nature, let's save environment, we're not doing a favor or anything. We are not apart from a different world. There is no planet B. There is no plan B. We are a part of that nature and environment that we're looking out and that we're stepping out to save. We're saving ourselves by saving nature. I think that is something we need to look at, and coexistence is something which is at the core of humankind. When we say no man is an island, even an island has nature around us. So I think we need to realize that when we are not an island, we have to coexist with nature. The future starts from these four things: education, economy, civilization, and environment. Lastly, to conclude, when we look at the future, we can look at two things. One is, of course, the challenges that lie ahead of us. One is, of course, starting from politics. The other is how do we survive, immediate survival of the human race after COVID. Is there a vaccine coming out? When is it coming out? Do we really need to roam around with masks? We have the future of jobs hanging around. I have so many people, messaging me saying, I've got this degree, I'm an MBA, I'm an engineer, please give me this job, that job. So this is going to be a huge thing because, yes, it is something. These are the clashes that we need to really look at. These are the wounds that we need to heal and move ahead. We've also got challenges like growth balance and growth imbalance between states, federal structures, countries, all of these things, and of course, a gender balance and gender equality that we're looking at. But then we also have the other glass or eyewear that we can look at the world through, and that is of hope. I think that is something we need to really pick up. When I speak of global youth leadership, like I said, I speak about continuity, I speak about unity, I speak about the future, and leadership that can be global and young is only something that will look at the world with the eyes of hope and look at any eye that meets the other eyes with hope in their eyes and move forward with the sense of hope, ambition, fire in the belly, and a sense of goodwill for the people of the world. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Maharashtra.
Thank you, Minister Aditya. If I were to take your opening statement and said, that you felt that the speech was as difficult as handling COVID, and I take it through how your articulation, your understanding of the problem, your inspirational thing about globalization, nationalization, leadership, and youth, and the whole thing of sustainability, and you actually did your whole address with a big smile on your face. And the way you've cracked this, I'm sure you'll crack the COVID problem in your state with equal ease and all. Thank you very much for your message today. And it was truly inspirational. And I'm sure you have earned a lot more of followers among those people who are listening to you today. But that is my very great privilege to invite from Bhutan, Mr. Ughindorji, the Honourable Minister for HRD, and Labour and Human Resources Government, Royal Government of Bhutan, Kingdom of Bhutan. So, Minister Dorji, over to you. Minister Dorji, may I request you to address us? I think you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, done. A very good evening to everyone at the FICCI Global Young Leaders Forum. It is a rare honor and a privilege for me to be addressing this forum. I must start by apologizing for changing my background here. I didn't expect it to get dark before my turn comes. It got dark and I had to come inside. I really wanted to show the beautiful background that you all saw earlier. But nevertheless, it is a beautiful place here from where I'm speaking. And I must once again peace in this very wonderful summit. Well, I am a son of a farmer and I grew up all my life in the remote mountain villages in the country. So I am a little hesitant to call myself, let alone a young global leader. I may not be able to give a global perspective on the issues that the subject and the point of discussion throughout the last 3 days. But I must nevertheless state my opinion, my experiences, my thoughts of having grown up in this mountain kingdom, which has so far espoused the gross national happiness as a development philosophy for the country. In other words, gross national happiness, the philosophy of gross national happiness is really a philosophy of sustainable development. I think it is wonderful that this summit is taking place against the backdrop of a raging pandemic that the world has never seen before. And it is precisely because of this fact that the FICCI Global Leaders Forum assumes much greater relevance compared to the past years, I suppose. We have all seen how the COVID-19 has disrupted the entire society, economy, the arrangements basically, not just at home, not just in the domestic space, but also in the international space. Against this backdrop, we have seen leaders and countries, governments really look out for ideas and solutions, basically not just to talk about the newer vision, but also to keep themselves afloat, especially against the economy that's shrinking, the challenges of unemployment and inflation that's going up, the supply chain disruptions. All this have been very difficult for all of us. And against this backdrop, personally, what I have seen is the leadership, the energy, the enthusiasm, the talent that the younger generation of citizens, whether it's in Bhutan or India or elsewhere around the world, bring to the table really holds some hope and potential to really make a difference against this backdrop. The challenges, as daunting as they seem, may not really look that daunting if we are able to really mobilize the power of the youth, really tap into the potential of a youth to really bring effect on the challenges that really seems to challenge us in the current situation. Coming back to South Asia, Bhutan hasn't really for centuries, as you all know, have seen beyond India. For us, India is the world. And I must tell you how happy I am to know about the fact that is the FICCI Forum, the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry is organizing this forum. Is very decent, the like of the World Economic Forum that the world has seen that's taking place in India. And I think the very fact that something like this is happening in India tells us about the fact that India is ready with its all this potential that the world keeps talking about, the of India to really lead the world. I think this is something really encouraging and promising. And when India does well, when the exchange of ideas happen among the Indian leaders from the younger generation, when there are so many contestation and exchange of ideas, when there is that deliberate attempt to nurture the younger leaders, to bring about the confidence, and to basically make them responsible for the future of not just India, but of the region and the world. I think there is a reason for us to be optimistic here in Bhutan as well. Because when India does well, Bhutan does well too. And the fact that I'm representing Bhutan in this forum, and in a forum organized by the FICCI, how must I say, it's a special feeling that I have, a feeling of optimism, hope, and a very bright future that all of us might have in future in the region. Lastly, as a Minister of Labor and Human Resources in Bhutan, one daunting challenge that I face in this situation is really the challenge of youth unemployment. On the one hand, we are talking about the optimism, the passion, the energy of our young people. But despite all this dynamism and the energy, if we are not able to really mobilize this energy and channel it into a way that really affects and fights challenge in the pandemic. I think it would be very difficult for our younger generation to really stay optimistic, find hope and energy in against the backdrop of the raging pandemic, like I mentioned before. It is in this light that the stakeholders in the society, the business, industry, government, the society must all work together, must collaborate to keep the morale of a youth high, to give them opportunities, whether it's through engagement programs like the forum that you have organized, through the skilling, through whatever support possible, basically to keep their morale high. Because unless we succeed in doing that, I don't think the future, the bright future that we envision, and with the catalyzing, the catalytic role that our younger generation is expected to play, I think all this vision will not materialize. So to start with, I think the governments, not just in the region, but also around the world, must find ways and means to keep the morale of the younger generation high in the first place, at whatever cost. Because if that morale starts going down, if they months and years, if the pandemic takes too long, and if their morale cannot sustain the duration of pandemic itself, I think the future is going to be very bleak. So the challenge for the governments in the region really has to be to, if you can solve the problem of unemployment, at least keep them preoccupied, engaged, happy, and very optimistic about the future of the country. I think that is the key to whatever leadership discussion or the leadership initiatives that might take place in and around the world. Lastly, about the themes on sustainable development, I'm sure all the distinguished the professionals who are gathered here for the summit, all of you are achievers, all of you are already leaders, and the guest speakers here, the honorable members, I don't really feel the need to really elaborate on the philosophy of gross national happiness and the sustainable development goals and the need for sustainable development in this day and age. But if there have been skeptics around the world, if there have been cynics around the world who thought sustainable development, the talk of sustainable development, gross national happiness is just a talk, a philosophy, a theory that isn't practical, that wouldn't work in reality on the ground. I hope this coronavirus pandemic and the challenges that it threw upon us would have at least made them realize the importance of sustainable development. I can keep on rambling, but I realize, like I said before, that there's not really much need for me to really elaborate and elucidate on all these concepts. Minister Thakri very well summarized all the topics that I would have loved to talk about. So I'll not really waste my time and waste your time blabbering on so many issues that may not make much sense to the wider audience here. So I think it's time that I stop here. But before I really wind up, I must once again thank the FICCI Global Leaders Forum, the organizers, for inviting me. I know I have not really agreed to speak at this forum right at the start because of the kind of the schedule that I have to really run through. Even as I speak right now, I'm on my way to my constituency where an unfortunate incident has happened and where my presence is required. So I must apologize for this not very organized thoughts, but nevertheless, I think it's a good start. I really look forward to working with you all, coming more prepared, adding value to your discussions in the coming years, because I don't think this is going to be the last forum that you would be organizing. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity and all the best.
Thank you, Minister Dorji. And, just like Minister Thakre earlier, you started by disarming us, and then, you went on to talk about how to make people optimistic, energize them, and also mobilize and channelize their leadership values. And of course, your whole thing about keeping a morale high at this point of time. And like Minister Thakre, you also did it with a smile. So thank you so much for being with us. President, you wanted to say something? President, over to you.
I just wanted to say I was inspired by our young and very erudite, very eloquent and great achievers. I also wanted to, invite all of you, the youth, please come and energize the FICCI annual convention. So the annual convention is on the 12th of December and the 14th. So we invite all of you, and also please do participate because innovation is not just the hallmark of the youth. The innovation is happening everywhere. And FICCI has created a unique platform called BIKE, which is Business, Information, Knowledge and Education. You are currently on the BIKE platform. It has another end to it, which is the virtual exhibition. So the annual expo is also being launched. So I invite all of you to please join us there and continue the great dialogue. And I love the positioning where youth is inspiring the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, President. With that, I am asked to actually thank Sri Aditya Thakri, Honourable Cabinet Minister of Tourism, Environment, Protocol, Government of Maharashtra, Mumbai, and also Mr. Lyonpo, Ughindorji, Honourable Minister of Labour, Human Resources, Royal Government of Bhutan, Kingdom of Bhutan, for being with us today. Many commonalities, many similarities in your speech, many common words: sustainability, inspiration, leadership. I think, if the world, if the youth of the world unite, like both of you said, the world would be very different as we go forward. So thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. And, both of you actually showed great agility and adaptability in your speeches. And in fact, Mr. Dorji, you came from outside to inside very, very quickly, realizing that it would be dark. So this just demonstrates the great thought process of the young people around the world. I'd also like to thank Dr. Sangeeta Reddy, President FICCI and Joint Managing Director, Apollo Hospital Enterprises, for her presence. I don't have words of thanks and appreciation for Mr. Shashwat Goenka, FICCI Young Leaders Forum and Sector Head Retail FMCG, the RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, for what he has done and what tremendous talent from around the world to share their views and thoughts over the last 3 days. It is a recognition of the hopes and aspiration and dreams of leaders such as you, which inspires us in FICCI to continue to engage people going forward. So thank you very much to you and your colleagues. Thank you to all the young leaders who've been here. And I think that the FICCI Young Leaders Global Summit has developed new connects, new connections, new friendships, and it has promoted dialogue, thought, and action to promote the growth of India and the world. So thank you, Honourable Minister Thakre, and thank you, Honourable Minister Dorji, for being with us, and thank you, Shashwat, for leading this initiative. With that, we end this valedictory session, and thank you, Leena and team, for putting it all together. Thank you very much, and thank you all the viewers and other supporters for being there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The special session today, a session which culminates our activities over the last 3 days as we engaged in a series of dialogues, fireside chats, and plenaries from youth leaders across the world towards inspiring the youth. And this session is extremely special, made special by the presence of someone who is revolutionary. I have the extreme honor and privilege to introduce to you a lady who is a personal inspiration. She's someone whom I have always learned from, be it from the character she espoused on television in her early days to now when she is a cabinet minister. She is a self-made woman a lady with an earnest dedication, a lady with stellar leadership skills, a lady who is unassuming, but who has been extremely successful in everything she has done. She is one of the youngest members of the cabinet, someone who is extremely dynamic and vibrant. In fact, if I can say so, path-breaking and brilliant. She is a person who believes in transformation, in reinvention, and yet remains rooted to the ground. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Honourable Union Minister for Textiles and Women and Child Development, Government of India, Srimati Smriti Irani. Ma'am, we at FICCI Young Leaders are committed towards developing, inspiring, and motivating the youth of the country in such a manner that they can participate proactively in all the efforts meant to provide growth to society. The Young Leaders Forum, comprising of young professionals and young achievers drawn from diverse fields of business and industry, aims at building confidence and leadership skills amongst its young members. Ma'am, we are indeed delighted to have such an enigmatic and dynamic personality as you amongst us. You truly are the source of inspiration of leadership and diligence for generations to come. With that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in once again welcoming a lady with extraordinary capability and extreme humility, Honourable Minister for Textiles and Women and Child Development, Ms. Smriti Irani, to share her views. Thank you so much.
It's indeed a unique happenstance that I happen to have the privilege of addressing FICCI Global Young Leaders Summit 2020, aptly titled Youth Icons Inspiring New Generations, today on the occasion of World's Children's Day. There may be some amongst you who feel that you are too young to shoulder the burden of the dreams of children across communities while you're still in personal pursuit of your dreams and your ambitions. However, I'm sure there are many amongst you who, while you build your own empires, are cognizant of the legacies you want to leave behind so that those who follow you have ample resources and opportunities to actualize their goals. To those conscientious citizens, I say, it is imperative we ask ourselves, while we are busy building a productive future for ourselves, what kind of youth are we building for the future, as once has been famously asked? Through engagements such as these, we build a spirit of competition, innovation, and competitiveness. But I also hope that we inculcate a desire to strengthen our communities. While we race to the future, we find time to engage with the intricacies of the past, the fundamental truths of the present, so that we as an economy commit ourselves not only to ease of doing business, but as a nation ensure ease of living for millions of our fellow citizens. How is it then this youth of the information age differentiates itself from those who fructified the dreams of an industrial age? There are some who had reduced the young to keyboard warriors. But with the advent of COVID, grudgingly, there is an acceptance that technology is the foundation upon which will be built a new India. And while we come together to build a nation resilient, we need to conscientiously identify our partners and prospects of growth. We are now at a time in human history where we recognize that sustainability is not merely an environmental promise, a way of life that we espouse, but also a business culture that needs to become the cornerstone of our work ethic. A work ethic that is beneficial to society and commercial enterprises. And while you translate, ladies and gentlemen, your visions for your businesses into successful realities, I hope you recognize that you are equally, uniquely positioned to be agents of societal change as well. And what better example can there be of that than the Greater 50 initiative of FICCI Flow, which trains companies for workplace inclusion, helps provide digital financial literacy, legally empowers women not only at the grassroots but also at the workplace. A true endorsement of the Prime Minister's clarion call to ensure women-led development of India. What began just 5 months ago under the aegis of FICCI has today become a project that has transformed the lives of 30,000 women. And hence to those who join us today to deliberate on tenets of inspiring new generations, those who celebrate young icons, and particularly those who are dedicated to building a just, inclusive, and responsible future, I quote Mahatma Gandhi, who said, "The future depends on what we do in the present." The fact that you, a dedicated collective today in the present, are hoping to build a better future gives me hope that the future of New India rests on responsible shoulders. My congratulations to Team FICCI, especially the young leaders who inspire many not only in our country, but today are a source of inspiration for many across the globe.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an inspiring message. I am, and I speak on behalf of every young member at FICCI. I think with each interaction with you, I am left feeling a lot more motivated, inspired, and enriched with knowledge. It's truly such an honor to have you representing our country and to have you also leading our country, the women, the youth, and the children. It's truly, truly an honor. I think with that, now I would like to invite Mr. Aditya Thakri, Director Bagri's Group, to deliver a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Shashwat, and thank you so much, ma'am. I would like to thank the Honourable Minister Smriti Zubin Irani, our Minister for Textiles, Women and Child Development, for a very powerful and very inspiring address. I think in a very concise address, ma'am has managed to cover some of the key messages for the youth today, especially the point that technology will build a new India, and we are no longer looking at the youth as keyboard pushers, but the fact that we are here to build technology which will get us more connected and get more done in these unprecedented times. The fact that sustainability is going to be the cornerstone of development, and as we build our businesses, it's our duty to not just chase growth but chase sustainable growth so that we can build a better world for the future generations, and that responsibility lies on our shoulders. And the very important message on women entrepreneurship, and thank you so much, ma'am, for especially endorsing all the good work done by FICCI and FICCI Flow in empowering over 30,000 different women. And I think it's just the beginning, and there's a lot more work to be done. With that, I would also like to thank Mr. Shashwat Goenka for hosting this 3-day virtual FICCI Young Leaders Forum and Summit. Shashwat is the chairman of the FICCI Young Leaders Forum and sectors head for Spencer's Retail Limited, and which is a part of the RPG Group. It is exactly this spirit of youth that has driven us to form the FICCI Young Leaders Forum. It's an exclusive forum of young achievers from different segments of society. The FICCI Young Leaders Summit has comprised of young professionals and young achievers from very, very diverse fields of business and industry. And it has aimed to build confidence and leadership skills amongst the national youth. And I feel if business leaders work efficiently towards addressing some of the challenges that we face today, especially in these unprecedented times, we'll be able to deliberate on influencing our voice towards the right sort of government support, and also focus towards unparalleled growth in the national economy and get ample industrial participation. Thank you so much for being a part of this penultimate FICCI Young Leaders Forum session. And I thank you, ma'am, and Shashwat once again for hosting this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.